Thank you, everyone, and welcome. We're just giving everyone a few seconds to join the webinar from the waiting room. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is Sabrina Paganoni, and today I'm really excited to be here on this webinar with Steve Kowalski and Lauren Webb. They'll introduce themselves, but I'm sure many of you already know about their work in ALS advocacy. And in particular, today, they're joining us for our monthly series about expanded access. We have been gaining a lot of experience with expanded access over the last few years, and some of these programs are connected to the platform trial, though they are a different program. Next slide. And so we work in collaboration with many wonderful advocates who represent people living with ALS, caregivers, foundations, different groups that are all working collaboratively to find new solutions to bring expanded access to people living with ALS. And so today, we wanted to have them join this monthly webinar so that they can tell us more about the great work they're doing in this space. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Lauren first, and then followed by Steve. Lauren?
Thanks so much. Well, I just wanted to take this opportunity to say how grateful I am to be a part of the EAP Patient Advisory Committee. It has been an amazing experience, full of encounter when trying to implement EAP. So then on the next slide, I'll show you this was a result of working in close collaboration with we wanted people to be aware of what the full suite of offerings are available to people living with ALS. And so in this guide, which is available both in English and in observational trials, what are studies and what are clinical trials, and a little bit more about expanded access as well as resources. So I would encourage you at this guide, as it's a easy to understand and can often be a first point of conversation between yourself and your clinician. Next slide. Thanks, Jesse. So this, I just wanted to share with, while I had the opportunity to share with all of you some of our guides that we have. It's on the previous slide, but that's okay. But we have a number of different guides that are available to help walk people through, some of the treatment options available. But we also created this online decision tool for people living with ALS to make decisions about non-invasive ventilation and about feeding tubes. And we know that in addition to those interventions and multidisciplinary care, that helps extend the quality of life and life expectancy. And so I would just encourage people, as you're considering all of your options and you're looking at different ways to consider, utilizing this decision tool to make, to walk you through what those potential options are. We also have we have a genetic counseling and testing for family members. And so we know as more and more people living with ALS are getting tested for testing for walk through a little bit more about EAPs and his experience. And what I can say from my perspective is that it's been really fascinating to watch this community grow and try to solve problems together. And being part of the EAP committee was really a strong opportunity to problem solve collectively. And we all felt like we have a voice, and we've been able to bring in different ideas together. So I'm very grateful, for the opportunity to be part of the committee. And, Stephen, I know has a lot of ideas. So please go ahead.
All right. Thanks, Sabrina, for having me, and thanks, Lauren, for all you do at the Les Turner ALS Foundation. We're very appreciative of the work that you do. My name is Steve. I was diagnosed with sporadic lower limb onset ALS in 2017. And upon my diagnosis, I quickly decided to jump, headfirst into research for a couple of reasons. Of course, I wanted to be able to contribute to the science and ultimately contribute to the process of finding treatments and a cure. But more importantly, I wanted to try to understand as much as I could about ALS, because when I was first diagnosed with ALS, I didn't really know much about it. And so I've since been very active in the research community, and I've learned a lot, and it's a great way to get involved. Jesse, I don't know if you can advance to the next slide. There we go. So those of you that are familiar with EAP, this may be, a review, but I thought it was important to share my key takeaways of what EAPs are. So for those of you that are new to it, this may be good information. But before I get into this, I want to say that, again, in 2017, there was a small group of patients who started, pounding the pavement about having EAP programs. We were a small group, and we targeted, pharmaceutical companies or sponsors, because we felt like that was the only way we were going to get EAPs to be an option for us in the ALS community. And so that's why even today, EAPs are run by sponsors. And of course, they make treatments available to those that don't necessarily qualify through inclusion or exclusion criteria in an existing trial. I personally got into an EAP as part of the platform trial as a direct result of no longer qualifying for trials because I was too far ahead years-wise, and no longer qualified because I guess I aged out in terms of what they were looking for in terms of when you were diagnosed or even symptom onset. So the other thing to understand that's important is the Act for ALS was a huge success with our community. We worked really, really hard to get this through because we knew that EAPs needed funding. And we thought that there was funding taking place for ALS research, and why couldn't there be funding for an extension of that called EAPs? I've since learned that, it's scalable, right? EAPs can be as small as one patient, and they can be up to 1,000 patients or more. So there really is no number limit, but there is some limitations, as I'll get to on my next slide. And then, of course, you need to go through your doctor or neurologist. And companies have no obligation to honor the request, but you do need to go through the process. And I do believe there's IRB protocols that need to be adhered to through the FDA. Next slide, please, Jesse. So, like Lauren, I serve on the advisory committee, and it's been a great experience. It's very much patient and ALS community led. And to Lauren's point, it's been really rewarding to see this, flourish over the years. And it's really increased in terms of participation over the past several years, mainly because of Act for ALS. But EAPs on a patient basis, per patient basis, I should say, is costly. I was very surprised when I started uncovering what the actual costs were. And it's not an inexpensive endeavor. And we will continue to look for funding sources to make sure that this program is sustainable. The Act for ALS in itself does sunset in about 2.5 years from now. And so hopefully we'll get that funded again. If not, we're going to have to do some heavy lifts to raise money to make sure that the numbers are sufficiently meeting the need. What I've learned in being part of the group also is that, this is like starting a business. And not only is it like starting a business, but it's like starting a franchise business, because we really, have listened hard to the great work that MGH has done, and getting network sites up and running. And we've worked really hard to make sure that there's a high level of awareness amongst patients out there, so that they take advantage of the network sites and the hard work that is taken place so far. The EAPs that are part of the Act for ALS, I'm actually really happy that some of the data is included in research, and particularly safety and biomarker data. Again, that makes us that participate in EAPs feel good about contributing to the science. So enrollment and awareness and process improvement within the ALS community is ongoing. As you can imagine, I believe there's 70 sites. Sabrina will correct me if I'm wrong, but just through what the HEALEY Center is working on, and that's a big task, and getting a lot of people around the country all moving in the same direction. And so I guess finally what I would say is, as a team, we listen, we learn, we offer our insights, but we're also cognizant of the fact that this program ultimately needs to be streamlined, and the enrollment process needs to be as seamless as possible, so that people do not get frustrated, or when they're ready to make the decision to join an EAP, they're not met with any resistance. So those are just a couple of my thoughts as a person who's living with ALS, who's passionate about advocacy and in research, and what I think the work we're doing as an advisory committee means to you, for those of you that are here tonight. So thanks, and I'll turn it back over to, I think, Sabrina.
Thank you both. I mean, first of all, it's really amazing to see how expanded access started in ALS because of the work of the two of you and other people that joined. All your great advocacy efforts, and many others have supported these over the years, and it's incredible to see how this would have not happened without participation from the patient community and the advocacy community. So we are already, at a place that was almost unimaginable just a few years ago, because the patient community rallied around all of this. And so today, I guess, we can take a few questions from the audience. I have a few questions for you as well. To start, I would say a big change, just say comparing, for example, to before the pandemic to now, big change is that we have a lot of material for people to learn about research and EAPs. And I want to take the first question. It's about some of the great materials, Lauren, that you and the Les Turner Foundation developed. I mean, you have a great set about different topics. So for people with ALS, living with ALS, they can use those resources for different decision-making, topics, for different topics. But the specific question is, what if somebody didn't know whether to stay? Let's say that somebody is already in a clinical trial, but they wanted to decide whether to move on to something else, perhaps a different trial or expanded access. Do you have a guide to help them make that decision, or what would be your recommendation for them to make the decision?
Sure. We don't have a guide, and I think that is a really important conversation to have with your clinician and with your study team, and really taking the time to learn, continuously learn about the current clinical trial environment and what that looks like, and think about your goals. Really think about through what are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you hope to happen, and better understand? And I think each a study drug or trial has its own benefits and risk, and different structures of how those are structured. So to answer the question, no, we don't have a tool, but I think the best tool is to really talk with your research team and understand the research landscape, and continue to better understand what's right for you. And only ultimately you and your loved ones will make the decision that's best for you. And I always tell, I was a research coordinator at a pediatric hospital, and I always told parents that you make the decision in front of you with all the information that you have, and you move on, right? You make that choice, and you can't look back. You can't, second guess, because you made the best decision that you could with the information that you had at the time.
Yeah, and I agree that it's wonderful to have more information available, because there's guides, there's online material, there's webinars like this one. Very important also to talk to your physician, as you said, and research team, because everyone could be in a little bit of a unique situation personally. And Steve, I want to ask you a question. So we often hear from people living with ALS that maybe they spoke with their physician about expanded access, for example, or about trials. The same would be true there. But maybe their local physician doesn't know or doesn't offer that. So I guess if that's the situation, that's a great place to start. And I would encourage everyone to start there, in addition to, again, all the material that's available. But then if your local provider doesn't have availability or is not familiar, what's the next step? What should people do?
Well, I think they should just be really persistent and try to find the answers online or in the ALS community somewhere. There's plenty of ALS organizations who are very familiar with EAP, who support EAP, and know the right people to get to get it, the information and possibly ultimately enrolled. So that would be, my suggestion. And, I would also encourage your provider to build their skill set in understanding what EAP is, and not just take the excuse that they don't know anything about it and they're, good luck. Once you do your due diligence and you find out, how to do it, I think it's really important you circle back with your provider and let them know that it's viable and it's an option and that they should be aware of it.
Great point. And as you said, there's a few different organizations that have tools to look up what trials or EAPs are available. I will say that, we have been running this webinar series, and that's not the topic of the day, but I think it was the topic of the last webinar we had. And it's recorded and available on our website, and the slides are also available for you to download them. Last time we had like a collection of resources that are available online. So if you don't mind going back to the website, I guess you register for this webinar if you're here. So if you can go to the website, the recording of the very last webinar we gave is a list and links and QR codes for everyone to be able to access all the different resources from many different groups. Les Turner was represented here, as well as other groups from, TDI, IMALS, ALSA, MDA. There's a number of groups that are all working collaboratively. We understand it, people get information from different sources, so it's good that we're all collaborating and sharing resources. There's a couple of questions about specific EAPs. And so, first of all, I want to kind of share that in terms of the Act for ALS, which is the law that Steve mentioned that's funding some of the available EAPs right now. Currently, so there are 3 EAPs that are open for that, based on that mechanism. An EAP of CNM A8, an EAP of RAPA, and an EAP of predopidine. There are other EAPs that were funded in the past or will be funded in the future, but those 3 are the 3 that are available right now. And again, you can go on our website if you want to know more, or clinicaltrials.gov also was recently updated to provide more information. But if you go again, if you listen to our last webinar, it explains exactly how to find all the information. But so the question is, if people are interested in any of these, CNM-Au8 or RAPA or predopidine, I guess, what's the right place to start for them? I don't know, Steve or Lauren, if you have any suggestions to start.
I think, the tricky part is there's limited offerings, like limited options for people to enroll in the sites. I think, to the previous question that one of the folks asked was, if their clinician isn't familiar with EAP, Niels has created a really wonderful guide for clinicians to be able to help explain it, walk them through what their process is, what do they need to do, because we really want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to find the best fit for them, and that can be difficult and challenging. But I think the place to start would be through Niels or MGH. MGH also, and I can drop the email address in there for MGH. They have a wonderful research access nurse who can provide information and help direct you. So if you're, don't have a strong clinic team and research team supporting you, MGH can help point you in the right direction.
And so, Steve, what we hear from patients a lot of time is that, yes, maybe there is a site that's available. Maybe they identified a location or a team or an EAP or trial, but then it takes time to get in because, there's sort of, a little bit of a mismatch between sort of the number of people who are interested and the available spots. So what would be your recommendation there?
Well, it's just the nature of trial enrollment. Some trials are highly desirable, or EAPs might be highly desirable, some and fill very quickly. Others are open and are always looking for recruits. So, again, I go back to the fact that, in the EAP space, it's costly. And so in an ideal world, we would open it up and have as many slots as we could possibly imagine, but we just don't. There just isn't enough funding to meet the need. So I guess we just have to be patient and know that if you don't make one trial, there's another that you could look into. There's plenty of opportunity out there. It's just finding out, to Lauren's point, what makes the most sense for you.
Okay, so I think we took the questions that are in the Q&A box for today. Just wanted to give both Lauren and Steve the opportunity for, saying a few closing words today. What's on your mind, or what would you want to say to people who are listening today?
I guess I'll go first. I just want to, again, let everybody know that the folks at MGH are just doing an heroic job on this effort. It is not easy, and it's it's not only financially expensive, but it's also resource intensive. And they've really stepped up and have done a great job. And I will make a plug for Judy Carey. If you want to, find out what's out there and what's available, if you're interested in the HEALEY platform trial opportunities, including EAP, she is a great person to start with.
I hands down flood her inbox. I don't know,
Yeah.
but she's a wonderful resource, and I think that really speaks to the fact that we need more funding to support clinical trial infrastructure, and we need rapid enrollment in clinical trials, and we need a nationwide commitment have options as well. And I think that comes through partnership with your community. And we're extremely grateful for MGH for leading the way and for really helping to grow expanded access in a pretty profound way in a short period of time. And we have a ways to go, but we have smart people working on this, and I consider everyone listening today a smart person who's also working on this, because you're here, you're asking questions, and you're wanting to advocate for yourself in the best way that you can. So thank you.
Thank you. And it's really a great team effort with NIH and multiple groups and foundations, people living with ALS. I wanted to give you the last word, but one question came in last minute. So I do want to take a second to address that. It's a good question. The question is, are the drugs being offered through EAP on their way to FDA approval? And that's a great question. I do want to emphasize, since this question just came in, that these drugs are not approved. So we do not know if they work or not. They are being investigated. That's why they're called investigational treatments. They're being investigated to find out if they work for ALS or not. And they are investigated in clinical trials. So expanded access is a way to offer access to these drugs for people who are not eligible for clinical trials. And this is sort of the basic premise of this. So it's important, I think, that you asked, because again, obviously, ultimately we hope that by doing clinical trials, we'll have more drugs approved. And more drugs approved means that then we wouldn't need trials or EAPs anymore, right? And so that's the hope. But right now, those drugs, again, they're not approved. But they are good options, and that's why all of this is sort of optional. It's not approved treatments, it's research. And whether people access research via trial, if they're eligible, or via expanded access, again, it's research, and these are options. They don't necessarily, these programs don't necessarily help with approval. Only all the clinical trials help with approval. EAPs are research, but they're not meant to be able to tell if a drug works or not. They're more for access. That's why they're called expanded access. That's in the name itself. And so just wanted to close with that, again, going back to the fact that now we have more options. It's not perhaps a perfect system yet, but there are more options. And again, I think everyone can make their own decisions based on their specific situation in collaboration with others who can advise them. So thank you so much for being here, Stephen and Lauren. And I'm sure we'll ask you to come back, because it's so important for people to hear from you about all the great advocacy work you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.